Welcome to Lantern Night Tales. Tonight's story comes from a place just beyond the known, where the land is red with memory, the clay holds voices of the dead, and one woman must choose between breath and blood. Before we drift into tonight's story, tell us, where does this lantern find you? Leave a whisper in the comments, your place, your hour, your quiet corner of the world. And if these tales offer you a pocket of stillness, tap a like. Share it with a kindred spirit. Subscribe if you'd like to sit with us again. Now, lay down your burdens at the door of this story. Let shadows rest and follow where the lantern leads. The wind carried dust like it carried stories, slow and searching. In the ancient hills of Nok, before writing had a name, before borders drew blood on maps, the land was rich with fire and bone. Clay furnaces lit the night, iron hissed and glowed in pits dug deep into earth. Cattle wandered through thorn gates, and the people listened to wind, sky, and drum. Among them lived a woman called Aswen. She was neither young nor old. Her hair curled tightly like coiled wisdom. Her fingers were dark and strong from kneading oils into bellies, from catching life before it could slip back into the unknown. She wore a wrapper of dyed bark cloth, always tied high for readiness. And around her neck hung a cord of cowrie shells, one for each birth she had caught. There were 49. Each one earned with sweat, prayer, and blood. Aswen was not of high blood. She had no husband, no son to feed her old age, only a hut near the stream and a goat that knew her moods. But when a woman's waters broke, when the time came for screams and breath, they all came to Aswene, even the chief. Chief Omokare ruled Nok with a voice like thunder and a stare that pressed silence into men's chests. His compound was large, carved from red stone and shadow. His wife, Eshime, was heavy with child. So heavy she could not walk without holding her belly with both hands. It was said the child kicked too hard too soon. It was said her womb might split like a gourd if the time was not watched closely. And so he sent word, Aswene, old mother of the red earth, come, attend to my lioness. Her moon draws close. But the day the messenger arrived, another scream rose in Nok. In the slave quarter, down the slope past the dye pits, a young woman named Afefe was writhing on her mat, soaked in her own waters. Her body was too thin for labor, her eyes wide with pain, and by her side only a cousin's with shaking hands and a cloth not yet clean. Call Aswene, someone cried. She is being sent to the chieftain's house, another said. The chief has wives, this one only has God. They argued. Aswene heard none of it. She was at the stream, hands in cold water, drawing breath from the trees. When the two runners arrived, one from the high compound, the other from the slaves, they knelt before her, dust on their brows. Aswene! The chief's man said first. The lioness calls. Aswene, the second gasped. Afefe is breaking, she screams like thunder. The wind held its breath, and Aswene, slow, careful, weathered Aswene, stood up, dried her hands, and said only, twins. Two suns rise together. I will follow both, but the earth will choose which one it keeps. That night the drums were silent. That night the sky burned red behind the hills. And that night, Aswene, the midwife of Nok, prepared for a birth that would not leave her whole. Aswene walked with her medicine gourd slung over one shoulder and a cloth bundle tied tightly to her back. Inside the bundle were herbs, dried bitter leaf, crushed camwood, smoked bark, and cloths she had torn from the garment of her own mother before she died. Two paths stretched from her doorstep. One led uphill to the chief's compound, the other downhill to the slaves' quarter. She stood at the crossroads. Neither runner spoke. Both watched. And Aswene said, I go to the younger first. The earth listens to her more. She turned downhill. Afefe was only 17 reigns old. Her belly was swollen beyond what her body should bear. Her cries were not of weakness, but of betrayal, like a girl lied to by the world. Aswene entered the hut. 3 women knelt around Afefe, whispering prayers to Obalufon and Eri, gods of wisdom and ancestors. Afefe's eyes locked onto Aswene's. She didn't speak. She only reached for her. Her thin hands were burning. Aswene kneeled beside her and felt the shape of the child. Then another. Twins. But one was turned wrong. Foot first, waiting like a warrior. Twins were a sign in Nok, sometimes a blessing, sometimes a curse. In older times, twins were whispered to be spirits sent from beyond, too powerful for one womb to hold. In darker years, one child was sometimes left outside, offered to the spirits before the sun rose. Now Nok was growing. Iron fed power. Trade brought gold and spices. People claimed to be wiser, but whispers never left fully. And twins always brought a choice. Afefe convulsed. Her legs kicked. Blood stained the cloth. She is too small, someone whispered. The child will tear her apart. She is a slave, another said. The gods will do what they want. Asuene silenced them with one look. She crushed bitter leaf between her fingers, placed a small wad beneath Afefe's tongue, and whispered in her ear, "You are not less because they do not name you. You are not clay. You are drum. Hold on. I will return." Afefe blinked. Her pain slowed. A moment of calm. And then Asuene was gone. She climbed uphill. The path steep and narrow, carved by goat feet and sandals. Red soil clung to her soles like blood. The chieftain's compound loomed ahead, guarded by young warriors with copper rings and curved staffs. One stepped forward. "Asuene," he said, his voice unsure. "Why did you not come first?" "I did," she replied. "The earth led me through the low place." He didn't understand, but he moved aside. Inside, drums were playing softly, not for dancing, for summoning spirit. The air smelled of roasted yam, palm oil, and fear. Eshime, the chief's wife, lay on a raised mat of straw and goat hide. Her face was twisted in pain, but pride held her upright. She did not scream. She gritted her teeth like a warrior facing battle. A servant wiped her brow. Chief Omokare stood nearby, arms folded. His gaze pierced Asuene. "You're late." "No," she said. "The child waits. I wait. Time obeys me." He said nothing. Eshime turned her head. Her eyes narrowed. "Is it true what they say?" she asked, voice hoarse. "The slave girl carries twins too?" "Yes. Will they be born before mine?" "That is not my choice." Eshime looked to her husband, then back to Asuene. "I do not want her child to take my child's cry." Asuene's brow furrowed. "Cry?" "The first cry heard," Eshime rasped. "It marks the elder, the stronger, the one with favor." Asuene said nothing, but something inside her twisted. She knelt and examined Eshime. This labor was different. The womb was heavy, but the children were ready. 2 of them, a truth no one had dared speak to the chief. She said it now. "There are 2. Omokare blinked. 2? Eshime nodded slowly. She had known. Women always knew before men. "What does it mean?" he asked. Asuene hesitated, then quietly, "It means the gods are watching." The room chilled. The night stretched long. Asuene moved between 2 births, one at the top of the hill, cloaked in power, expectation, and fear, and one in the mud and ash, where blood pooled beside hunger and prayer. Afefe's labor worsened. She bled too early. Her cousin wept as she held the cloth against her back. In the chief's house, Eshime gritted her teeth and pushed with the strength of a lioness. But one child remained stubborn. The second twin turned against her ribs like a locked door. 2 births, 2 women, 2 lives, and only one midwife. Asuene stood at the top of the hill once more, looking down at Nok. The stars above shimmered like ancestral eyes. The wind whispered through the clay houses, and inside her chest her heart beat like a drum out of rhythm. "Choose," the ancestors seemed to say. "Choose and be marked." She closed her eyes. The air that night was heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. From high ground to low, Nok lay silent beneath the stars. Even the animals seemed to quiet. No bleating goats, no howling dogs, just firelight flickering through doorways and the rustle of fig leaves in the wind. Asuene stood at the middle path again. She had tied her wrapper high. Her hands were slick with sweat and ash. Her sandals were soaked from washing blood off her ankles. Her mind, sharp as obsidian, was beginning to split. 2 mothers, 2 wombs, 2 sets of twins, 1 breath, 1 midwife. She could not split herself. She had tried. She had moved between births like a spirit summoned too many times. But now the moment had come. Both cries would come within the hour. In Afef's hut, the air was thick with incense. Her cousin had lit camwood to ward off spirits, but it only made the hut hotter. Afef's eyes had rolled back at one point. Her hands clutched the mat beneath her. One foot trembled like it was trying to escape the rest of her body. She was going into convulsions, and the foot of the first twin had begun to show. A breech birth. Asuene knew that if she didn't stay, the girl and the child would die. Maybe both children. But she had already told the chief she would return. She stood, her eyes met the cousin's. "Do not let her roll. Keep her upright. If she passes out, blow bitter leaf into her nose. I must go." The cousin wept. "She will die." "I know," Asuene said. Back at the compound, Eshime was near full dilation. Her body moved in waves. Her face had twisted from pain to fury. "I want them out!" she bellowed. Aswene arrived just in time to see the head of the first child begin to crown. It was a smooth birth, fast. Eshime was strong, her breath deep, her pain held back like a warrior's war cry. With a final push, the child slipped into Aswene's hands. A boy, bloodied and wide-eyed. He did not cry. Aswene tapped his back, cleared his nose. Still. Silence. She rubbed camwood into his heel and pinched, a faint whimper, then a stronger cry. The first breath, the first voice. Outside, a guard raised a horn and blew into the sky. All of Nok heard, "The heir of the lioness is born." But Eshime screamed again. "There is another!" Do not forget the second. Aswene knew. She could feel it. The second child had turned and lodged in a strange position. If she did not act quickly, both Eshime and the second child might die. But Afefe might already be dying. Aswene looked at the first child, warm, healthy, wrapped in the finest linen. She looked at Eshime, furious, regal, blood-soaked, and she thought of Afefe, alone in the hut, with no horn to announce her child's breath. She had no more time to delay. She turned to Eshem. "Let another woman stay with you," she said. "I must go." The chief who had entered to see the child stopped her. "No," he said. "I must. You will not leave her side." His voice dropped. "Do you know what this child means to Nok? He is the future. You will not let his twin die." Aswene stood still. Her heart drummed. Her hands tingled with old pain. She had been here before, not in body, but in memory. When Aswene was young, no more than 16 seasons, she had been the one on the mat. Her mother, too old to deliver, had bled out beneath the baobab tree. The midwife had chosen the chief's second wife over her. Her mother's cries had gone unheard. The child, her brother, had never breathed. And now here she was. The midwife. The decider. The weight of the past returned like floodwater. She met the chief's eyes, and she lied. "The second child is already dead. The womb is still. The gods have taken one." The chief stared at her. Eshime stared too, confused, still mid-push. And Aswene turned, fast as a wind change, and ran down the hill. Afefe was barely breathing. Her cousin had done what she could. The bitter leaf trick had kept her conscious. But the foot was now protruding, and Afefe's screams had gone silent. Her body was beyond pain. Aswene did not speak. She doused her hands in water, mixed camwood and kola nut into paste, and began to shift the child by touch alone. She reached inside, guided the foot, then the second. The child was not moving. She whispered over and over, come back, you are not dust yet, come back." And then, with a final pull, the child emerged. Still, blue, thin, a girl. Afefe's head lolled. She was unconscious. Aswene turned the child upside down and slapped her. Nothing. Slapped again. Nothing. She dipped her into warm water, cleared her nose, breathed into her mouth. Nothing. She took her outside, placed her on the cold ground. Stillness. Then a faint gasp. Another. A cry, soft at first, then rising like morning thunder. Afefe stirred. "She lives? She lives." The second? Aswene froze. She had forgotten. There was a second child, still inside. The girl had cried, and with her cry the stars blinked, as if stirred by the sound of something that should not have survived. But Aswene's face remained stone. Afefe had lost too much blood. Her skin was pale and her breath shallow. The birth of the first twin had stretched her body beyond safety. And now, another child stirred inside. A second twin, still unturned, still demanding to live. Aswene placed the first girl, warm now, against Afefe's chest, a cloth tucked under her tiny chin. Her lips searched blindly for a breast, though none came. And then, Aswene felt it. A ripple. A kick. The second child was alive, but twisted, backwards. The womb had already begun to contract and retreat. Afefe would not survive another long push. Her body, small as it was, had no more to give. "If you turn the child," the cousin whispered, "will she live?" "No," Aswene replied softly. "Then don't," the cousin begged. "Let the second be swallowed. One is enough." Aswene closed her eyes. Her hands hovered over Afefe's belly. Inside her mind, she heard the cries of other mothers, long dead. She saw the face of her own mother. And then, the face of the chief's firstborn son, whose cry had now claimed the air above Nok. Two cries. Two sets of twins, but only one could live whole. She stayed silent. The stars looked down. The goat at her hut bleated once, and a jackal howled in the distance, not from hunger, but from knowing. Aswene spoke aloud. "Spirits of the drum and clay, if I save the second, the mother dies. If I let the child go, the mother will heal. Tell me what honors life best." But the wind gave no answer. She looked at Afefe, unconscious, blood drying around her thighs. She looked at the tiny girl, now asleep, mouth parted, breath gentle. Then she placed her hands on Afefe's womb and whispered, "Give me." And she did not turn the child. She did not reach inside again. Instead, she pressed her palm flat against Afefe's belly and began to chant the song of release, an old, forbidden melody that called the unborn back into the spirit world. The hut dimmed, the candle flickered out, and inside her, something broke. When morning came, the second child was gone, dissolved into stillness. Back at the compound, the chief announced the birth of twins, though only one was shown to the people. Esheme claimed her strength had allowed her to hold both lives. She named the boy Omotayo and the girl Esen, meaning gift and echo. To the people, 2 children had been born of power. To Asuene, one was a spirit cloaked in words. And what of Afefe? She survived, she healed, and her daughter, the one who cried into the night, was called Anyanwu, meaning sun that does not sleep. A name that defied silence. But no one marked her birth with a horn. No one carved her name into stone. She grew in the shade of Nok's power, barefoot and unnoticed. Years passed. Asuene never delivered another child again. She became a teacher instead, a keeper of herbs, a whisperer to young girls about the truths of their blood and breath. She never spoke of the second child she sent away. But sometimes, in the cool of evening, when firelight danced against the clay walls of her hut, she would hear a second cry, soft, distant, not quite of this world. And she would whisper, "I remember you. You were the shadow behind the sun. You chose silence so another could breathe." Years passed. The Nok Hills baked beneath sun and time. Iron grew hot in the forges. Trade paths stretched farther. Stories shifted like wind-blown sand. But the clay remembered. And so did Anyanwu. She grew wiry and sharp-eyed. A child who listened more than spoke. She knew herbs by scent before she could name them. She mimicked birds. She asked strange questions. At 9, she climbed the sacred baobab, barefoot, grinning. At 11, she fasted for 3 days because a dream told her to. At 13, she stood at Asuene's door one night and asked, "Was I supposed to die?" Asuene, now aged and slow of foot, looked into the girl's eyes, so much like Afefe's. And behind them, something else. A double shadow, a mirror not yet broken. She answered without words, only a quiet nod. Anyanwu nodded back, then left. She never asked again. In the compound, like Esheme's children were now nearly grown. Omotayo, the chief's son, walked like a man twice his age, strong, thoughtful. But Esheme's daughter, Esen, was silent and pale, often sick. Her breath rattled when she slept. "She is touched by spirits," the priest said. Esheme called her blessed, but others whispered the word empty. One market day, Asuene passed both girls by the river. Anyanwu knelt, washing cloth. Esen stood nearby, holding a carved gourd like she feared it might bite her. The difference between them struck her hard. The child who should have died, strong, barefoot, radiant. The one who was raised as the true twin, thin, flickering like a dying fire. Fate had played its joke, or perhaps truth had never agreed with power. One night, Nok burned. A neighboring village, long resentful of the chief's expansion, attacked the outer fields. Fire swept across yam barns and goat pens. Warriors scrambled. Horns called for protection. Omotayo led the defense. And Asuene, she stood behind her door, clutching a dried gourd filled with ash, waiting for dawn. The next morning, Omotayo returned bloodied but victorious. Nok was saved, but the cost was steep. Among the wounded was Esen. She had collapsed while fleeing the smoke. Her breath had grown too weak. The village healer gave her herbs. Priests sang at her bedside. But on the 3rd day, Esen died. Esheme wept, not like a queen, but like a mother undone. The whole village mourned. Drums beat, a goat was sacrificed, her name carved in the ancestral pillars. And through it all, Anyanwu watched, silent. Then she came to Asuene. The twin who should have died lived. The twin who was claimed faded. "Yes," Asuene said. "Which one am I?" Asuene looked at her, no longer a child. "You are the one who chose breath." But the peace would not last. Esheme's grief turned bitter. She began to suspect. Rumors reached her ears that one twin had been stillborn, that Asuene had lied. One night she summoned Asuene to the sacred grove. "You took my child's breath," she said, voice cold. "I gave her all I had," Asuene replied. "She was not strong. She was not meant for this world." "You decided that?" "No," Asuene said. The silence did. Esheme stepped closer. "You will leave Nok. I am Nok." The next day, Asuene walked alone to the edge of the village. She carried only her mother's cloth, a calabash of herbs, and a flute carved from bone. Anyanwu followed, silent. At the hilltop, Asuene turned. "They will forget me," she said, "but they will remember what I carried. You." Anyanwu stepped forward. "I will speak your name, old mother, when the wind moves, when drums beat, when someone must choose." Asuene smiled, then vanished into the red dust. The season after Asuene left was dry, not just in the land, but in the breath of Nok itself. The yam fields cracked, the river thinned, women miscarried more often, goats birthed still, the drums of celebration fell silent, and the old one said, "Something has been broken in the clay." Anyanwu, now 16, sat most nights alone beneath the old fig tree. The same tree her mother had bled beneath long ago. She would grind herbs slowly, sing softly, and sometimes she would place her hand on the earth and whisper, "I know you remember her. I know you remember what she did." But Nok tried to forget. They built a shrine to Essen, called her the twine who protected the village, though none remembered her voice. Eshime, emboldened by grief, called for a new law. No girl of Nok shall practice midwifery unless she is blood of the line. The women murmured, the elders nodded, and just like that, the last trace of Asuene's teaching vanished from the square. But fate does not forget so easily. One night, Omotayo, now heir and war leader, fell ill. It began as a fever, then shaking, then strange visions. He called out names no one knew, swore he saw a woman with clay-covered hands standing in the firelight. The priests came, they lit incense and burned bones, but the fever deepened, and Nok grew afraid. If the heir died, the chiefs would divide. Factions would rise, old enemies would descend from the hills. The people began to whisper, "We need the woman who turned death into breath." But she was gone. Except, not entirely. One night, as the fever raged, Anyanwu slipped into the compound. She carried a gourd wrapped in palm leaves. Inside, ash from the fig tree, dried bitter leaf, powdered bone, and the sacred bark Asuene had taught her to find. Eshime blocked her. "You are not called." Anyanwu stared into her eyes. "You took my mother's breath," she said. "Now your house needs mine." She passed. Eshime did not stop her again. In the dark, she knelt by Omotayo's mat. He was burning, eyes unfocused, his body jolting with unseen touch. She poured the ash around his head, marked his temples with camwood, and she whispered, "Brother who is not my brother, son of power, listen. You are standing where the river splits. Come back." For hours she stayed. And just before dawn, the fever broke. Omotayo opened his eyes and wept. The next day he walked the village. He said nothing of dreams, only that he had been held by hands that remembered the truth. And he declared, "Let the midwife's line be restored." Anyanwu became Nok's new midwife, but she was not like Asuene. She was fierce, direct. She carried blades and brewed poisons for those who beat their wives. She helped orphans. She walked alone and unafraid. She told the story of her sister, the twin who had not been born, and slowly Nok began to speak the name Asuene again, not with shame, but with breath. One evening, under the setting sun, Anyanwu sat at the fig tree. A young girl approached, belly round, eyes frightened. "I am with child," she said. "I know," said Anyanwu. "I don't know who the father is." "It doesn't matter. Will the child live?" Anyanwu pressed her hand to the girl's belly, then looked to the hills. "I do not decide," she said, "but I will carry you through." And from the trees above, a faint wind stirred, as if someone long forgotten had exhaled. The smoke rose like a ribbon in the wind, curling over the hills where Asuene had vanished long ago. But she had not disappeared entirely. In the shadow of the forest, hidden by towering iroko trees, the old midwife lived among the forgotten. Her hands bore the marks of time and healing. Her eyes held the depth of rivers. One evening, under a sky heavy with stars, a stranger appeared at her door. It was Anyanwu. "Mother," she said softly, "I am here." They sat by the fire, the night humming with cicadas and the scent of bitter leaf. Anyanwu spoke of Nok. The village struggling, the laws changing, the birth of new life, and the deaths that still haunted. Asuene listened. Then she revealed what she had never told. "When I left, I did not run from Nok. I ran to become the woman Nok needed me to be, in the silence. I learned the songs of the earth, the breath of the ancestors, and I waited for the day when my daughter would call me home." Anyanwu's eyes glistened. "I carry your strength, but I fear I am not enough." Asuene reached out, clasped her hands. "You are the fire in the night. The clay remembers you. You are enough." But Nok was still a land of trials. The chief grew old and sick. Factions rose. Enemies circled like vultures. Anyanwu returned, her body marked with scars, her spirit fierce. She healed the chief with herbs and song. She stood before the council and spoke truth. We must choose life over fear. We must honor all who are born, even those who come in shadows. The council murmured. Some nodded, some shook their heads, but the wind had changed. And with it, the drumbeat of Nok grew steady again. In the final days, Aswene taught Anyanwu the last song, the song of becoming. Together, they sang beneath the baobab. The village listened. And the clay, ancient and alive, held the story of two sisters, born of pain, choice, and love. If this story drifted softly through you, say so. Leave a comment, like it if you wish, share it with someone who listens before they speak. And if you wish to sit by this lantern again, subscribe. May its flame find you beneath tomorrow's hush. Until next time.